Every gift hides a secret knife. That's what flashed through my mind the moment my daughter Lisa tossed a crumpled lottery ticket at me and unveiled a pair of $13,000 Mediterranean cruise vouchers for her husband Daniel. I forced a polite smile, but inside my world was cracking. Follow my story to the end and drop a comment with the city you're watching from, so I can see how far this tale of betrayal and fortune has traveled. I caught Lisa's smirk as the lottery ticket fluttered across the table. Dad, if this little gem hits half is mine, she teased, voice dripping with that condescending sweetness I'd heard since she was a teenager. I leaned back, the vinyl of my chair creaking under me. Thoughtful, I said, stamping down the heat rising in my chest. The ticket felt like a mocking slap beneath my fingertips. Across from me, Daniel adjusted the cuffs of his crisp white shirt and beamed like a prize calf at auction. Proper gift, huh? Daniel said, eyes sweeping the room. He lifted the cruise tickets from their silk-lined box with reverence, the gold embossing gleaming as if it owned the sunlight. Lisa's laugh rang clear. He's always done so much for us, Dad. You know, helping with the house, the school fees, the country club. She let her sentence trail, letting me fill in the details of my own sacrifices. I scrolled back through the years in my memory, greasy midnight oil spent in the auto shop, double shifts so Lisa could graduate debt-free. The nights I dozed in my recliner textbooks on my lap, dreaming of her future. And now this. I hope you both enjoy the cruise, I said quietly. Thanks, Daniel replied, slipping the tickets back into the box as if closing a precious case. I will, I added, but I meant only the ticket in my hand. Dinner dragged on. Lisa babbled about cabin upgrades and private balconies, and Daniel recounted business deals like they were heroic sagas. I sipped my coffee, forced conversation, measured every word to keep my voice steady. From the corner of my eye, my sister Margaret shifted uncomfortably, and my grandson Jake glanced up from his screen, puzzled by the sudden tension. Later that night, I logged into my bank account out of habit. Balance unchanged. Then I spotted a withdrawal for $13,000 to Seaside Voyages. My pulse pounded. My daughter, my own flesh and blood, had tapped into my savings without a word. I picked up the phone. It rang twice before Lisa answered. Dad. Lisa explained Seaside Voyages for 13 grand. A pause. Then laughter. Oh, that I used our family account, yours, to get Daniel something special. You wouldn't have spent it. Her words hit me like a crowbar. Lisa, that's theft. It's family money, she said breezily. Daniel's been there for us. Besides, I told you half the lottery was mine. I closed my eyes. This was the little girl who used to fall asleep to my bedtime stories. Now she sounded like the stranger. I hung up trembling. I called customer service, revoked her access, and felt a cold rush of relief. For the first time in years, I was in control. The next morning, the state lottery drawing flashed on TV. I almost changed the channel, then froze. And the winning numbers are 7, 14, 23, 35, 42, Powerball 18. My heart thundered. I grabbed the soggy ticket from the trash where I'd chucked it in anger and held it under the light. Every number matched. I fumbled through spilled coffee grounds and crumpled receipts in the trash until I grasped the ticket, stained but legible. My hands shook as I dialed the lottery hotline. The mechanical voice confirmed it. I'd just won $120 million. A hurricane of emotions ripped through me. Exhilaration, vindication, horror at Lisa's gall. I sat on my kitchen floor, the ticket clutched to my chest, tears pricking my eyes. All those years of sacrifice, serenity shattered by her greed. Now fortune had smiled on me, but with it came a storm I couldn't ignore. I knew what I had to do. I was no longer the passive provider. I was the victor with my own destiny. Tomorrow I'd reclaim my dignity. But tonight, sitting among my humble walls, I realized this wasn't just about money. It was about respect, trust, and the family I once thought unbreakable. And this was only the beginning. I woke before dawn, the lottery ticket clutched in my fist like a heavy promise. The kitchen was silent, save for the hum of the refrigerator. I stared down at the faded numbers. 7, 14, 23, 35, 42, Powerball 18, etched into the thin paper that had borne my daughter's cruel joke. My heart pounded so loud I thought it might crack my ribs. I pressed the ticket against my chest and felt a surge of something impossible, vindication, fear, exhilaration. I dialed Margaret. By the second ring, her warm voice floated through the receiver.
Stephen, I'm still half asleep. What's going on? Margaret, I won the ticket. It's real. I won $120 million. She gasped so sharply I winced. Are you sure in the trash, Maggie? I fished it out. Every number matched. My voice caught. Lisa, she wanted half. Silence. Then, you have to be careful. People will swarm you. I nodded though she couldn't see me. I know. By sunrise, the news was out. My phone buzzed with texts, friends offering congratulations, neighbors expressing disbelief, lines uncomfortably thin between genuine joy and envy. Then came the blows, a flurry of social media alerts, #GreedyDad, #lottery scandal, mocking memes, messages, accusing me of stealing my daughter's rightful share. Comments from strangers dissected my character, labeling me a miser who hoarded family money. Stephen, don't read the comments, Margaret warned when I called again. They don't know the story. Doesn't matter, I said softly. It's out now. Lisa called next. Her voice quivered with indignation. Dad, you won't get away with this. That ticket was my gift. Gift. I laughed, a hollow, brittle sound. You stole $13,000 from my account for Daniel's cruise, then tossed me a $2 joke. That was my gift. Don't play the victim, she snapped. I meant what I said. Half is mine. Then sue me. I challenged, muscles taut. I'll see you in court. She hung up. The click of the receiver echoed like a death knell. Just when I thought the storm couldn't get worse, a different kind of message arrived, a call from Michael Daniel's father. I agreed to meet him at Murphy's Diner that afternoon, hoping for some semblance of reason from the man who'd raised the son I'd once admired. Murphy's looked the same, red vinyl booths, black and white tiled floor, the faint aroma of burnt coffee. Michael stood by the counter, tall in a tailored suit that made me feel a decade older as I shuffled in wearing my worn leather jacket. Stephen, he said, extending a firm hand. We sat across from each other in a corner booth. A waitress arrived with coffee before we'd ordered. Michael sipped quietly, studying me. I don't want to fight, he began. But you need to understand how this looks. How what looks, I asked. Voice steady despite the heat in my chest. Your daughter gave you that ticket as a gift, and you've turned it into a public spectacle. I leaned forward. I didn't ask for a public spectacle. I was humiliated at home, then vilified online. I simply reclaimed what was mine. He exhaled slowly. Lisa's tedious, emotional response has gone viral. People think you're heartless. People who don't know the half of it, I muttered. Michael's eyes softened. I witnessed that day. You didn't discuss splitting anything. Lisa tossed the ticket at you like trash. I felt a swell of relief. Then why step in? Because blood is thicker than water, he said quietly. I wanted to see you protected. He pulled out his phone and scrolled through a drafted statement, his public declaration attesting that the ticket had been a gift with no conditions. It carried weight. His reputation in the community was sterling. He hit post with a decisive tap. Within minutes, the tide began to turn. Messages of support from Daniel's colleagues, neighbors, even local journalists flooded my feed. The #GreedyDad hashtags faded under a new wave of #gift given and #family honor. I watched notifications pop like fireworks, and for the first time in 24 hours, I felt more than a fragile hope. I felt vindicated. Thank you, I said, voice thick. He nodded. Family matters, he repeated, but this time without chastisement. When I left Murphy's, the sky was slanted gold. My world still felt unsteady. The ache of betrayal hadn't left me, but at least now the narrative was balanced. And yet a new chapter awaited, claiming the prize itself. 2 days later, I stood in front of the Ohio Lottery Commission's glass and steel headquarters. Reporters formed a semicircle, cameras clicking like synchronized rain. A red carpet led to a podium draped in the lottery's logo. I smoothed my tie. Lisa gave it to me for Christmas 5 years ago, as I reminded myself to breathe. Janet Chen. The official I'd met at the local office greeted me with a warm smile. Ready? She asked, extending her hand. I swallowed. As I'll ever be.
The ceremony began. Janet spoke of public transparency and community trust. Then she announced my win, handing me a giant ceremonial check for $120 million. Applause thundered in my ears. I peered at the check, disbelieving, and felt a tremor in my hands. Reporters bombarded me with questions. What will you do with the money? How do you feel about the family controversy? I spoke of my plans to help hardworking families start small businesses and restore dignity through honest work. I chose my words carefully avoiding scandal, but acknowledging my daughter's betrayal. Then, like a thunderclap, Lisa appeared at the edge of the crowd, flanked by Daniel and a cluster of onlookers. Her face was pale, mascara-streaked. She pushed through security with a desperate determination. "Stop this!" she cried, voice quavering. "That ticket was mine." Cameras swiveled. My chest tightened. I stepped back from the podium, heart pounding, and spoke calmly into the nearest microphone. "That ticket was a gift," I said, voice cutting through the commotion. A gift with no strings attached. Daniel's face contorted with anger, but Michael, standing beside him, laid a steadying hand on his son's shoulder. Michael caught Lisa's eye and nodded toward me. In that moment, I saw her realization flicker. The truth, once up for grabs, was now clear to everyone. Security escorted her away as I finished the ceremony. I signed a few documents and posed for photos, but my mind drifted to the ticket framed in my office. No longer trash, but a testament to the power of boundaries and self-respect. That evening, I returned home to the quiet of my modest house. The glare of news vans and chatter of social media faded into memory. I sat at my kitchen table, coffee cooling beside me, and looked at the ticket's ghostly imprint on my palm. Betrayal had brought me here. Fortune had followed. But it was the choice to stand up for myself that had transformed my life. As dusk settled, I realized the journey was just beginning. I might have won millions, but the real victory lay in reclaiming my dignity. And no amount of money could ever replace that. The morning after the ceremony, sunlight filtered through my blinds in soft golden bars across the kitchen table. I sat there, the framed lottery ticket gleaming in its new glass case beside my coffee cup. The world outside moved on. Lawnmowers hummed, neighbors waved, but inside me swirled a storm of anticipation and unease. Winning $120 million had felt surreal. Now came the quieter battle of building a life I could believe in. I poured another cup of coffee and dialed the bank to schedule a meeting. I needed financial advisors, lawyers, people who could help me protect this windfall. As I waited on hold, my phone buzzed. It was Lisa. I stared at her name, my finger hovering over decline. For a long moment, I thought of the little girl I once held in my arms, of bedtime stories and scraped knees. Then I pressed the red button. No good would come of that conversation. An hour later, I found myself in a sleek conference room overlooking the city skyline. 3 advisors sat around a polished oak table. Files neatly stacked, their expressions a blend of excitement and professional detachment. Mr. Hayes said, the lead advisor, a woman named Carla, extending a firm handshake. "Congratulations. Let's talk goals." I cleared my throat. "I want to start small," I began, voice wavering. "Restore my dignity before anything else. I'm not the type to buy yachts or mansions." I glanced at the framed ticket on the credenza. "I want to help families like mine, single parents, folks with honest work, and I need to secure my own future, set boundaries." Carla nodded, tapping notes into her tablet. Charitable foundation, personal investments, property. She sketched out a strategy: low-risk portfolios, a foundation endowment trust accounts to prevent impulsive spending. I listened, relief mingling with an odd prickling of fear. Could I really manage this? I thought of Lisa's betrayal, of social media's fickle memory. Here, though, I felt in control. As we finalized the plan, my phone buzzed again. A message from Margaret Lunch at Murphy's I'll Drive. I smiled. Michael had done me a solid the day before. I owed my sister support too. I closed the meeting and gathered my things, heart lighter than it had been in weeks. Stepping out into the warm afternoon, I drove the familiar streets to Murphy's. The diner bustled with lunchtime patrons. Margaret waved from our usual booth. Her eyes glistened when I sat down. "You look good," she said quietly, "like you found your footing." "I think I have," I admitted. I told her about the advisor's plan and my vision for the foundation. She reached across the table, squeezed my hand. I'm proud of you, Stephen. I just hope Lisa sees that someday, I whispered. She shook her head. Trust me, she'll hear about it. We lingered over cups of coffee, reminiscing about childhood mischief and our parents' steadfast love. It felt grounding, a reminder that family could still mean something real. We parted with a warm hug and I headed home, resolve steadying my steps. The next day I drove to the auto shop I'd bought on the outskirts of town. The sign now read, Hayes Classic Auto Restoration, and beneath it a smaller plaque supported by the Hayes Family Foundation. I parked my car and stepped inside, breathing in the familiar scent of motor oil and steel. My first hire, a young mechanic named Marcus, waved from beneath the hood of a '67 Mustang. Morning, Mr. Hayes, he called. His eyes lit up when he noticed me. Ready to get started, I grinned. Let's see what she needs. For hours, I worked alongside Marcus, tightening bolts, swapping spark plugs, and teaching him the tricks my father taught me. Every turn of the wrench felt like reclaiming a piece of my identity. The rhythmic clank of tools was comforting, a language I still spoke fluently. As we worked, Marcus talked about his plans. He wanted to open his own shop someday. And I realized that this mentorship could become part of the Foundation's vocational program. By late afternoon, we stepped back to admire our progress. The car gleamed under the fluorescent lights. I felt a surge of pride and more than that purpose. I turned to Marcus. You did good today. He nodded, eyes bright. Thanks, sir. Means a lot. I left the shop that evening as the sun dipped low, casting long shadows across the pavement. At home, I found a letter waiting my first grant application for the foundation from a single mom starting a small bakery. I read her heartfelt plea and smiled. I would make sure she not only received funds, but also mentorship in running her business. This was what I dreamed of, turning pain into something constructive. That night, I sat at my kitchen table with the lottery ticket case open beside me. I touched its glass surface and whispered, thank you. Not for the money, but for the lesson it brought. Freedom meant more than wealth. It meant the ability to choose who I would be, regardless of betrayal. Just then, the mail slot clattered. I retrieved a thin envelope addressed in Lisa's handwriting. My heart tightened. I opened it slowly. Inside was a note. Dad, I miss you. I'm in trouble. I sold jewelry to stay afloat. Please help. No number, no meeting request, just a confession and a plea. I placed the note on the counter and closed my eyes. Memories of her childhood laughter warmed me, but distrust lingered like a stubborn shadow. Could I risk helping her again? Could I separate the daughter I loved from the woman who'd hurt me? Tomorrow I would decide. But tonight, as I locked the kitchen door and turned out the lights, I felt something shift inside me. The foundation was more than charity. It was my path forward. And whether Lisa came back into my life or not, I knew I would continue on this course, guided by the values that money alone could never buy. The next morning, sunlight crept through my bedroom blinds in thin slats, painting my walls in gold and shadow. I lay in bed, the letter from Lisa still on the nightstand, its handwritten plea circling my thoughts like a restless bird. I thought of her trembling words, I'm in trouble. I sold jewelry to stay afloat. Please help, and felt my chest tighten. Memories of her childhood flooded back, scraped knees from learning to ride a bike, excited whispers as we planned her college future. But beneath those tender recollections lurked the sting of her betrayal. Could I trust her again? I pushed back the covers and stood feeling the pull of purpose and doubt as I moved to my kitchen. I poured coffee and stared at the foundation's charter on my laptop screen, imagining the single mother's bakery I'd committed to fund. My reflection in the window looked older, wearier than I'd like, but resolute. I needed clarity before responding to Lisa. With the mug in hand, I walked the familiar path to Murphy's Diner, hoping Margaret's steady presence would guide me. The bell above the door jingled and her warm smile greeted me before I even sank into the booth. Morning, she said softly, setting down her coffee. You look like you've wrestled a thunderstorm in your head. I have, I admitted, pressing the crumpled letter between my fingers. She wants help. My voice caught on the last word. After everything. Margaret's expression softened. Your heart's still big, but your mind's right to warn you. What do you want to do? I wrapped my hands around the mug, savoring the warmth. I don't know. I owe her kindness, but I can't ignore what happened. I met her eyes. If I help, am I enabling her? Or is that just fear talking? She nodded slowly. Boundaries don't mean you stop caring. You helped half the town already. You set up the auto shop program, the foundation grants. You're doing good. Helping Lisa could be part of that if you set terms. Terms, I repeated. The word tasted like steel. What might that look like? Clear expectations. A repayment plan if she has means later. Mentorship, not just cash. She has to rebuild trust, not just her finances. I exhaled, tension loosening. Okay. I slid the letter across the table. I'll write to her. I'll ask her to meet me here tomorrow. No money handed over until we talk terms. No walking away if she can't meet them. Margaret reached across her hand steady. That's fair. That evening, I sat at my desk in the quiet of home. The desk held the framed ticket I'd won with, of all things, a joke. I picked up a pen and with slow care composed my reply. I told her I was willing to help, but under condition she would sit down with me at Murphy's to discuss a plan. She would share full financial disclosure. She would agree to counsel through the foundation's programs, and she would understand that any funds were a loan, not a gift. I folded the letter and sealed it in its envelope. The next morning, I drove to the post office, cold air stinging my cheeks. As I dropped the letter into the outgoing slot, I felt both dread and relief, the first step toward a reckoning I didn't quite know how to navigate. Late that afternoon, I returned to the auto restoration shop. Marcus was under the hood of a '55 Chevy cotton overalls smeared with grease. He glanced up and smiled. "Mr. Hayes, you're early." "I wasn't really planning to be," I admitted, wiping my hands on a rag. "Got some personal business." He nodded, closing the hood. "Family." I nodded back, something like that. He pursed his lips but didn't press. Instead, he handed me a wrench. "Need a hand." Together, we worked in companionable silence, the scent of oil and metal a balm to my frayed nerves. As I tightened a bolt, I thought of the foundation's mission, helping people rebuild through honest work. Helping Lisa could mirror what I was doing here, teaching skills, offering structure, showing that empowerment sometimes comes in the form of expectations, not just handouts. The next morning, I arrived at Murphy's 15 minutes before our appointment. The diner was quiet, the lunchtime rush hours away. I smoothed my shirt and watched the entrance. When Lisa walked in, she looked smaller, her wide eyes rimmed in shadow from lack of sleep. Her shoulders were hunched as if braced against the world. "Dad," she whispered, sliding into the booth across from me. I nodded, gesturing to the seat opposite. The waitress brought coffee without asking. Lisa stared into her mug as though it held the answers, but I waited in silence until she looked up. "You called me here," she said. "I did." I folded my hands on the table. "I read your letter. You're in trouble." Tears glistened in her eyes. I was desperate. Daniel lost half his clients, the house payments piled up, and I didn't know what else to do. I sold my wedding ring, Dad. I thought you might understand after everything. I studied her for a long moment. The woman before me was both my daughter and a stranger shaped by pain and poor choices. "I do understand desperation," I said softly. But taking $13,000 from my account without asking, that wasn't desperation. That was betrayal. Her face crumpled. "I know. I'm sorry." I was ashamed to admit how bad things were. I nodded slowly. "I'm willing to help you, but not as a charity case. I'll loan you what you need, $200,000 with a repayment plan over 5 years. You'll work with the foundation's financial counselor, attend budgeting sessions, and you'll mentor under Marcus here at the shop to learn a trade, something you can fall back on." She blinked, voice trembling. "A trade?" "Me?" "Yes," I said firmly. "Skills matter. Money without skills runs out. But if you learn a craft, you can rebuild. And if you can't meet the plan, we revisit it, but no more unilateral decisions." Her lips trembled, the first sign of acceptance. I'll do it. I promise." I leaned back, the weight in my chest easing. "Then we start today. I'll have the paperwork drawn up. And Lisa, thank you for coming." Tears slid down her cheeks. "Thank you, Dad." As we sat there, the afternoon sun slanting through the window, I felt a cautious hope bloom. The path ahead would be rocky. Trust once shattered doesn't mend overnight. But watching her, I glimpsed the spark of the little girl who once believed in bedtime stories and scraped knee kisses. And for the first time since that dinner table massacre, I believed in a second chance for both of us. When I left Murphy's diner that afternoon, I felt the weight of our agreement settle into my bones. Lisa had agreed to the terms counseling mentorship, a structured repayment plan, and in that moment, I believed we might begin to heal. The next morning, I gathered the paperwork at my kitchen table, the foundation's letterhead crisp and official, and signed my name with both resolve and a faint tremor. I photographed the signed agreement and sent it to her, then placed the originals in my briefcase before heading back to the auto shop. Marcus looked up as I walked in, wiping his hands on a rag. "Everything okay, Mr. Hayes?" I smiled, feeling a surge of gratitude for this young man's steady loyalty. "Better than okay," I said. "I've got something for you." I handed him 2 envelopes, one with the loan documents for Lisa's startup, the other with a letter inviting him to co-design our mentorship curriculum. His eyes widened. "This means a lot," he stammered. "Thank you." "Let's make this count," I said. "Come by tomorrow morning. We'll map out the program." As he nodded, I thought of Lisa's uncertain smile when she left the diner. This foundation was my chance to prove that money matched with purpose could rebuild lives. That evening, I drafted the first blog post for the Foundation's website, Building Futures with Honest Work. I recounted how a simple act of empowerment teaching a trade could create lasting change. I reviewed the words twice before hitting publish, then sat back in my chair, heart swelling. The notification pinged almost instantly. First comment, amazing. A small victory, but meaningful. 2 days later, I drove to Lisa's apartment with the first wire transfer ready. The city skyline glimmered in the distance as I pulled up outside her building. My palms sweated against the steering wheel. I braced myself and climbed the stairs to her door. When she answered, her eyes startled me. They were wider, as if she still couldn't believe her luck. She waved me in and I set the envelope on her coffee table. "Here's the first installment," I said, "plus a check for your counseling sessions." She reached out trembling as she accepted it. "Dad, I don't know how to thank you." Her voice cracked with relief and guilt in equal measure. "Save the thanks," I replied gently. "Show me your budget, every expense, every dollar." She nodded and fetched a laptop. Together in that cramped living room, we mapped out our finances, rent, utilities, back credit card bills, the small stipend for our foundation's counselor. I asked questions, made suggestions, and saw her posture shift as she realized this wasn't a handout, but a partnership. That night driving home, I felt both exhausted and hopeful. My phone buzzed with an alert someone had donated to the foundation after reading my post. A stranger's generosity inspired by my story reminded me that kindness could ripple outward. The next morning in the shop, Marcus and I walked through the equipment garage, pausing before a workbench I had dedicated to Lisa's training. I handed him the curriculum outline, basic engine repair, customer communication, safety protocols. "Your feedback," I asked. He nodded, scanning the pages. "Looks solid, but maybe start with oil changes. Quick wins build confidence. Then move to brake systems." I approved his suggestion, updating the plan on the spot. Watching him transform my rough draft into a focused path, I felt the synergy of our mission. 2 weeks into our agreement, I stopped by Lisa's apartment unannounced. Through the window, I saw her under the hood of a beat-up Civic. Her brow furrowed in concentration as she tightened a bolt. I knocked gently and she hopped out, wiping grease on a rag. "Learning fast," I said with a grin. She laughed, a genuine sound that warmed me. "This program works. I didn't know engine blocks could be so fascinating." She handed me a tube of grease. "Your turn." Side by side, we worked in companionable silence. Every click of a wrench echoed with memories of shared moments. Not the betrayal, but the nights I stayed late fixing her first car, the pride beaming in her eyes. Here, with tools in our hands, words felt unnecessary. That evening, over dinner at home, I asked about her progress with the counselor. Her face sobered. "It's hard," she admitted. "Facing my mistakes, my pride. But I'm learning why I avoided admitting my problems." She looked down at her plate. "Thank you for making me do this." I reached across the table and squeezed her hand. "You're doing the work. Choices are yours. In the following week, small victories piled up. Lisa paid down a chunk of her credit card, secured a loan to replace her mother's ring, and even joked about designing a logo for the foundation. Our phone calls shifted from tense negotiations to shared excitement about the bakery she planned to launch once her finances stabilized. I reminded her gently that every milestone earned her more trust. One afternoon, I received an invitation from the local council. They wanted the foundation to host a community workshop on trade skills. Excitement shot through me as I replied yes, imagining hundreds benefiting from our model. I shared the news with Lisa, and she beamed with pride, telling Daniel and her neighbors, who now greeted me on the sidewalk with nods of respect rather than sideways glances of gossip. Yet not everything was smooth. One evening, Lisa called voice tight. "Dad, I'm behind on rent again. Unexpected car repair. I messed up." My heart clenched, but I remembered our terms. "Gather your invoices and receipts. We'll go over the budget tomorrow, and if it fits our plan, I'll cover it. If not, we adjust your payment schedule." Silence, then a relieved breath. "Thank you. I'll have them ready." The next day, we sat at Murphy's once more, strategy in hand. Watching her own disciplined diligence, I felt both pride and compassion. She faced consequences without anger, and I respected that. We tweaked her budget, shifted some funds, and reminded her that this partnership was built on honesty and accountability. Months passed and the foundation's programs grew. Marcus led group workshops in the shop while I spoke at community centers about responsible wealth and empowerment. Lisa stood beside me at one event, introducing me to attendees as her father and mentor. When she looked at me, pride in her eyes replaced the old disdain. In her posture, I saw that our wounds had begun to heal. One evening, after a long day at the shop, I returned home to find a handcrafted photo album waiting on my kitchen table. Inside were snapshots, me teaching her as a child her graduation, the tense dinner where everything fell apart, and finally photos of her at work under the hood smiling. A note slipped between the pages read, "Thank you for not giving up on me." I closed the album, pressing it to my chest. My eyes misted. In that moment, I realized that while the lottery ticket had changed my financial life, this journey, the struggle, the trust rebuilt, the empathy earned had changed my heart. I whispered into the quiet house, "We did it, Lisa. We both won." And as the night settled around me, I understood that true fortune lay not in millions of dollars, but in the resilience of family and the profound power of second chances. The morning after our community workshop, I awoke to a text from Marcus. We had over 50 people show up. Bakery owner wants to partner. I sat up in bed, heart pounding with excitement. The previous evening, Lisa had stood beside me in the crowded hall, her voice steady as she introduced our foundation's trade skills program. Watching her confidence bloom from those shaky diner booth negotiations felt like witnessing a miracle. But today, as sunlight cut through my blinds, I sensed another test on the horizon. Downstairs, I poured coffee and scanned the headlines online. The local paper had run a piece lauding our foundation's growth, quoting me on the importance of empowering through skill and accountability. But tucked in the comments was a snide remark, "Looks good unless dad forgets a daughter's birthday again." My chest tightened. Even success carried its share of critics. I shrugged it off and headed to the shop, coffee in hand. The garage smelled like hot metal and possibility. Marcus greeted me by the '69 Camaro we were restoring wipes streaked across his forehead. "Dad Hayes," he called with a grin, "we've got a donor lined up for 2 more workstations." I smiled back, but the joy was tinged with steel. "Let's meet them this afternoon at the shop. Then I'll swing by Lisa's to check on her bakery planning." By mid-morning, we'd finalized details with the donor, a retired teacher who wanted her former students to learn real-world trades. As we shook hands, I felt the sting of pride and a whisper of fear. What if I slipped back into thinking money alone would fix everything? I glanced at Marcus, whose eager nod reminded me that mentorship mattered as much as grants. After the meeting, I drove to Lisa's apartment. I found her leaning over a laptop surrounded by recipe cards and bakery owners' emails. Her hair was pulled back and flour-dusted her jeans. She looked up with a bright, tired smile. "Dad, perfect timing. I need your advice on this catering contract." I sat beside her and studied the terms. A local charity wanted a Mother's Day pastry sale. The numbers looked promising, but delivery logistics were tight. "We can adjust your staff schedule," I said, "and I'll underwrite the first batch of ingredients. But make sure the contract covers liability and don't agree to more than you can bake." She nodded, typing furiously. "Got it. I'm learning that late nights in the kitchen are worth it if you plan ahead." Her laughter warmed me. In that moment, the memory of her casting aside my lottery ticket felt distant, like a bad dream. Over the next week, our routine fell into an easy rhythm. Mornings at the shop, afternoons with bakery planning, or foundation strategy evenings, sharing a simple meal together. We celebrated small wins like the first oil change class graduation and the first sold-out pastry box. But beneath our progress lurked the echo of old wounds. I still woke some nights reliving Lisa's betrayal. She still flinched when I mentioned finances too bluntly. One evening, after a long day, I found a letter slipped under my door. The envelope bore the foundation's embossed emblem, but inside was a terse note. A word of warning. Stop funding your daughter's schemes or face consequences. I know where you live. No name, no signature. My heart slammed against my ribs. I stared at the note, disbelief and anger roiling. I thought of dark corners from my past, late-night walks home from empty garages, the worry that drove me to protect my savings. Now someone was threatening me for being generous. I stuffed the note into my pocket and forced myself to breathe. I wouldn't be bullied into retreat. That night I called Margaret. Someone sent me a threat. I said, voice low. "Are you serious?" She gasped. "I'll come over, not yet. I want to handle this myself." I ended the call and lay awake, mind whirring. I realized the threat was more than intimidation. It struck at everything I'd built: trust, generosity, hard-won dignity. The next morning I showed Marcus the note. His eyes narrowed. "We're not backing down," he said firmly. "I'll beef up the shop's security cameras." His solidarity gave me strength. "Thanks," I said. "Let's keep going." That afternoon I met the donor at the shop again, pretending normalcy as I mentally filed away the note. The donor chatted about his former students. I smiled and nodded, determination bulking my resolve. If fear was the price for compassion, I'd pay it. Later I drove to Lisa's bakery, meeting her rented kitchen humming with mixers. I handed her a cup of coffee. When she saw the worried crease between my brows, she touched my arm. "Dad, what's wrong?" I swallowed and decided honesty was best. "I got a threat. Someone doesn't like what we're doing." Her face paled. "But why we're helping people?" "Exactly." I gave her a sad smile. "And that scares some folks." She wrapped her arms around me. "We won't let them win," she whispered. That night we sat at my kitchen table and devised a plan. I'd officially report the note to the police, citing it as intimidation. Lisa volunteered to install an IP-secure network at the shop. She'd taken IT courses through the Foundation's small business program. Watching her take charge solidified my belief that empowerment worked both ways. The next morning at the precinct, Officer Ramirez took our report. He listened sympathetically, then promised added patrols near my home and shop. As he filed our statement, I felt a surge of relief. For the first time since the note, I believed we were protected. Back at home, I found a text from Lisa. Meeting went well. Saw the look in their eyes. No more threats. I let out a long exhale. "Thank you." I texted back, meaning more than she'd ever know. By the time evening rolled around, the tension had loosened. We shared grilled cheese sandwiches and warm soup, laughter masking the shadows of the day. Lisa raised her glass of iced tea. "To us, unbreakable team." I clinked my mug gently. "To us." In the days that followed, our programs continued to grow. At the next workshop, former critics came up to applaud their earlier doubts, washed away by real results: jobs secured, families stabilized. Even neighbors who once whispered replaced their murmurs with nods of respect. One morning I sat in my office, the framed ticket catching the light. I thought about how a simple newspaper comment once threatened to wound me, yet here I was standing stronger. My phone buzzed a message from a bakery supplier. "Your daughter's cinnamon rolls are flying off the shelves. Congrats." I smiled wide and sent a text to Lisa. "We did it." Her reply came almost instantly. "Couldn't have done it without you." I closed my eyes and nodded. The road had been rocky: betrayal, threats, sleepless nights, but each challenge had tempered my resolve. As I opened them, I I realized that genuine fortune wasn't just what lay in my bank account, but in the resilience forged by facing adversity together. And with that, I stood up ready to meet whatever came next, knowing that no obstacle could break the bond we'd rebuilt from the ashes of our past. I woke to the hum of my phone buzzing on the nightstand, the dawn light still soft through the blinds. Lisa's name appeared on the screen. Dad, you won't believe this. I got a call from Channel 4. They want to do a follow-up segment on the bakery and the foundation together. My heart thudded in my chest. The very media attention I'd feared now felt like validation. That's incredible, I texted. Tell me when. Over coffee, I thought back to the chaotic dinner table where everything had started, and I marveled at how far we'd come. Not just the millions in the bank, though, that had opened doors, but the journey from betrayal to collaboration, from a crumpled lottery ticket to a thriving community effort. The living proof of change sat beside me as I walked into the kitchen. Freshly baked cinnamon rolls cooling on a rack, Lisa's small bakery's trademark swirl dusted in sugar. By mid-morning, I pulled up to her shop. Through the window, I saw her teaching an assistant to pipe icing. She looked up, caught my eye, and waved flour on her cheek, gleaming like a badge of pride. I slipped inside just as she finished a lesson. They nailed it, I said, inhaling the sweet aroma. The segment is tomorrow morning. Channel 4 wants to film here, then head to the shop next door. Her eyes widened. Do we look ready? Absolutely, I assured her, placing a hand on her shoulder. You've built this from scratch. Her smile faltered for a moment. Humility or residual doubt, I couldn't tell, but she squared her shoulders. Okay, let's do it. That afternoon, I drove to the auto restoration shop. The parking lot was full of donated cars awaiting transformation. Marcus was already organizing volunteers for the film crew's arrival. They'll want to see oil change demos and hear our story, he said, excitement in his voice. Got your talking points? I nodded. Authenticity first. We spent the rest of the day tidying the shop and setting up a workbench for the on-camera segment. Tools gleamed under overhead lights, and a banner with both the foundation logo and the Hayes Classic Auto Restoration name hung proudly. As I worked alongside Marcus tightening the final bolt on a restored Mustang chassis, I reflected on how I'd once seen my shop as a solitary sanctuary. Now it was a classroom, a community hub, a symbol of redemption. The next morning, Channel 4 arrived at Lisa's bakery just as she pulled a tray of miniature fruit tarts from the oven. The crew buzzed around the counter lights and microphones in tow. I watched from the doorway as she greeted them, composure and warmth in her eyes. I stepped forward when the reporter asked, "Can you share how you and your father collaborated to make this happen?" She glanced at me, then back to the camera. "My dad taught me that work and respect go together," she said, voice steady. "When I hit rock bottom, he gave me structure, not just money. That gave me the strength to rebuild." A knot of emotion tightened in my throat. Afterward, the camera followed us to the shop, capturing us side by side as we showed volunteers how to change oil filters and clean carburetors. The reporter asked Marcus about the program's impact, and he spoke eloquently about jobs created and confidence restored. When the segment concluded, the crew thanked us, promising to air it that evening. As I closed the shop door behind me, I felt lightheaded. Success came in bursts of pride and reminders of how fragile trust could still feel. I pushed the thought aside and headed home, eager to see Lisa's reaction to the footage. Back in my living room, we set up the TV with 2 mugs of coffee. The segment began with shots of our foundation's banner, then cut to me leaning against the Mustang's fender. My heart raced as I saw myself speak. Money can start things, but it's purpose that moves people. Then came Lisa's scene in the bakery. I watched her expression, pride, gratitude, and something deep inside me shifted. I realized we'd truly changed one another's lives. Tears pricked my eyes. Lisa reached over to squeeze my hand. "Dad, we did it. We did," I whispered. That evening, we walked to Murphy's Diner for a quiet dinner, the place where so many pivotal moments had unfolded. The waitress offered us our usual booth, and I pulled the door for Lisa like I used to when she was a child. Over grilled cheese and fries, we talked about what came next, expanding the bakery's catering. Rolling out a scholarship program through the foundation, maybe even sending Lisa to culinary school one day. When we finished, I suggested a detour to the shop. I want to show you something. We drove under the orange glow of street lamps to the garage. I flicked on the lights. The workstations, once empty, were now occupied by volunteers and budding mechanics. On the wall, I'd pinned a framed photo of Lisa and me at the initial diner meeting, and beside it, our newest newspaper clipping featuring the Channel 4 story. Lisa studied the display eyes, misty. All this started with a $2 joke. I chuckled softly. It took a few million to get rolling. She laughed, then grew serious. Dad, I need to ask you something. My chest tightened. Anything. Do you ever regret it? She said quietly, giving me a second chance. Even after what I did, I looked at her, the person who'd tossed me that ticket, who'd siphoned my savings and humiliated me. Then I saw the woman she'd become, resilient, determined, capable of kindness. I squeezed her hand. Not for a second. You taught me that love isn't just giving, it's demanding growth. And I needed that as much as you did. Her lips quivered in a smile. Thank you. We stood in the empty shop surrounded by engines and hope, and for a moment the world felt right. The trials, betrayal threats, sleepless nights had forged something stronger than money or pride. They'd built a bond rooted in accountability and compassion. As I locked the door and we walked to our cars, Lisa slipped her hand into mine. Under the pale glow of the street lamp, I looked at her profile, her determined eyes, the gentle curve of her smile, and knew that our story was far from over. Yes, we'd hit the jackpot in more ways than one. But the richest prize was the family we'd reclaimed one honest step at a time. And that, more than any windfall, was my greatest victory. The week after our Channel 4 feature, I woke before dawn again, this time to a renewed sense of purpose rather than dread. The bakery's ovens hummed in my mind, the shop's tools clinked faintly like old friends. I brewed coffee and stared at the framed ticket on my desk. From a joke to a prophecy, it had led me here to a place where money served a mission and family meant restoration. That morning I drove to Lisa's bakery. As I pulled up, she stepped outside wiping flour from her apron. Her eyes met mine with that familiar spark of determination. Dad, she called, I need you in the kitchen. I followed her through the swinging doors to find a line of volunteers setting up for our second community bake sale. The tables were stacked with boxes of pastries, each tagged with our foundation's logo. Despite the early hour, the air buzzed with energy. Lisa pointed to a clipboard. We've got catering requests piling up faster than we can bake. But we're short on oven space. She frowned, biting her lip. I don't want to turn people away, but I also don't want to overpromise. I studied the crowded kitchen. Folding tables, blocked pathways, electric mixers whirred on every counter, and volunteers darted back and forth. Okay, I said, let's figure this out. We huddled over the clipboard. I suggested staggering pickup times, extending baking hours into the evening, and recruiting a local church's kitchen for overflow. Lisa's shoulders relaxed as we worked the plan, taking shape like fresh dough rising. By mid-afternoon, our system was in place. I slipped out to head next door to the shop where Marcus was readying for afternoon classes. Inside, volunteers crowded around two newly installed workstations courtesy of our anonymous donor. Their excitement reminded me that empowerment was contagious. I clapped my hands. All right, everyone, gather round. I outlined today's oil change demonstration and introduced a local high school principal who'd come to scout vocational opportunities for students. Her interest underscored the ripple effect of our work. We weren't just teaching skills, we were changing perceptions about honest labor. Later, as I drove home, my phone rang. It was Margaret. Stephen, did you see the news? She asked, voice low. I hurried to pull over. What is it? A rival bakery chain had announced they'd open a franchise on Lisa's block complete with industrial ovens and national advertising. They'd cited her Channel 4 mention as evidence of a promising market. My stomach nodded. Competition was inevitable, but this felt personal, an aggressive move aimed at overshadowing our grassroots success. I'm sorry, Margaret said. I know how hard you two have worked. I closed my eyes, then exhaled. We adapt, I said, more to steady myself than to comfort her. After we hung up, I sat in the car for a minute, considering our next steps. We could let fear dictate our reaction, or we could lean into what made our project special: community, Root's personal stories, and the bond between father, daughter, and neighbors. That evening, I found Lisa finishing up a late bake. Her face looked drawn, but her eyes still burned with resolve. I told her about the new franchise. She stopped measuring flour and stared at me. "We can't compete with their capital," she whispered. "They could outbake us in a week." I put a hand on her shoulder. "We don't have to compete on volume. We compete on authenticity." I laid out my plan. We'd host a Bakers and Mechanics open house next weekend, live demos in the shop, fresh pastries on site, and candid talks about our journey. No slick advertising, just real stories and hands-on experiences. "People come for connection," I said. "They'll choose us if we remember who we are." Her lip quivered. Then she nodded. "Okay, let's do it." Over the next days, we spread the word through local groups, the foundation's email list, and word of mouth. I worked late at the shop helping volunteers build demo stations. Lisa stayed after hours in the bakery sketching menus for the event, mini meat pies alongside classic cinnamon rolls, a symbolic nod to our dual mission. On the crisp Saturday morning of the open house, the turnout was astonishing. Families wandered from station to station. A father taught his son how to change oil. A mother sampled Lisa's strawberry turnovers. High schoolers lined up to ask about apprenticeship opportunities. The rival franchise's grand opening, by contrast, had drawn a sparse, indifferent crowd, rows of officers in suits, handing out flyers to neighbors who barely looked up. At midday, I watched Lisa chatting animatedly with community leaders about expanding her catering. She turned to me, eyes bright. "They love the concept. Where else would they get a pastry and a hands-on engine demo?" In one place, I laughed, heart swelling with pride. Only at Hayes and Hayes. That afternoon, Margaret arrived with homemade lemonade. She hugged both of us. "I knew you'd show them what real community means." I looked around, volunteers laughing as they worked, families bonding over greasy tools and sugary treats, neighborhoods drawn together by simple acts of service. The rival bakery's neon sign flickered in the distance, irrelevant against our tapestry of humanity. As the event wound down, we gathered under a string of lights in the shop's courtyard. Jake, my grandson, climbed onto a crate and tapped a spoon against a bowl. "Let's hear it for Dad and Lisa," he shouted. Everyone cheered. Lisa grabbed a megaphone and grinned. To second chances and fresh starts, I felt tears blur my vision. When the crowd dispersed, Lisa slipped her arm through mine. "Dad, we did it again. We turned a threat into an opportunity." I squeezed her hand. "That's what we do." That night, I sat alone in my home office, the ticket's frame illuminated by a desk lamp. I reflected on the journey, the initial betrayal, the windfall, the threat, and now this triumph of cooperation over competition. My phone buzzed with messages, bakers offering supplies, mechanics, volunteering equipment, a local council member asking us to replicate this model in another neighborhood. Margaret had once warned that critics lurked behind every success, but I realized criticism was the price of significance. We had chosen a path of purpose over comfort, and every challenge only sharpened our resolve. I stood and walked to the window, looking out at the night-lit street. Somewhere out there were neighbors whose lives we'd changed, families, finding hope in our partnership, a daughter and father who'd rebuilt their bond brick by brick. I touched the cold glass. Feeling gratitude settle in my bones. Tomorrow would bring new challenges, more bake sales, more classes, perhaps new rivalries. But as long as we stayed true to our roots and to each other, I knew we'd face them with the same grit and grace that had carried us this far. And in that, I found peace, the knowledge that true fortune is earned together, one honest step at a time. The following Monday, I arrived at the bakery just as dawn's first light peeked through the windows. Lisa was already there, kneading dough at the counter, her brow furrowed in concentration. I slipped behind her and handed over a steaming mug of coffee. "Early bird," I teased. She managed a tired smile. "Can't sleep," she admitted. "I've been up all night drafting that proposal for the community college partnership." She tapped the stack of papers beside her mixing bowl. "They want to incorporate our bakery and mechanics model into their vocational program." My heart leapt. "That's huge. Means more resources, more students." I felt a swell of pride but saw the worry in her eyes. "What's wrong?" She sighed and stirred her coffee. "Daniel isn't thrilled. He thinks my time should be spent focusing on our home renovation, our family. He said this partnership is too big, too fast." I reached across the counter and squeezed her shoulder. You deserve to decide your own priorities. Lisa's eyes flickered with guilt. I know, but it's not just about me. Daniel helped me get through those rough months. He's got a point. We need stability. I let the words hang, remembering our early days of tension before the workshop, before the revival. Your strength isn't in pleasing everyone. It's in standing up for what matters. I nodded toward the papers. This partnership will secure your bakery's future and the foundation's mission. She nodded slowly, her grip tightening on the mug. You're right. I'll tell him tonight. Her voice wavered, and I realized how much this fight tested more than business. It tested her courage to choose her path. Later that afternoon, I drove to the auto shop and met with Marcus. He was calibrating the welding torch control panel when I arrived. How's the open house follow-up? I asked. Great turnout at the high school tour, he reported, eyes bright. We had inquiries from 10 students interested in apprenticeships. I smiled, then shared Lisa's dilemma. As I explained Daniel's concerns, Marcus frowned. That's unfair. Her bakery and the shop are proof we can build something meaningful, if he can't see that he's part of the problem. His bluntness made me laugh. He's her husband, not her enemy. But she needs support, not pushback. Marcus nodded firmly. I'll back her 100%. At home that evening, I found Lisa in the living room scrolling through her phone. The ring of a glass against wood made her look up as I entered. I handed her a plate of leftover tarts. Fuel for courage. She took a bite, then set the plate aside. He's coming over in an hour. We're supposed to talk about our budget. My chest tightened. I remembered months ago when she'd demanded that cruise gift. Now it was my daughter asking another man to respect her dreams. Want me here? I asked quietly. She hesitated, then nodded. Please, I need you. When Daniel arrived, he looked tense, cycling through half smiles as he shook my hand. We sat at the kitchen table with budgets spread out like battle plans. Daniel spoke first. Lisa, I worry we're stretching ourselves thin. There's paint permits, mortgage payments, this college deal. It feels risky. Lisa sat up straight. I appreciate your worries, Daniel, but this is my business. It's not a risk, it's an opportunity. Her voice grew stronger with each word. I need projects that grow the bakery's reach and help the foundation's mission. You taught me to dream big. He frowned. I did, but you also promised to help with our family goals. Renovation college fund for Jake. Her jaw tightened. And I will. But I can't sacrifice my vision. She turned to me. Dad, I told him I need you in my corner. I leaned forward, looking Daniel in the eye. You raised a stubborn, brilliant woman. She's built this from nothing after her lowest point. She needs you to trust her instincts. Daniel's posture softened. He ran a hand through his hair. I'm sorry. I've been scared for us. Lisa reached across and held his hand. I know, but please believe in me the way you used to. They sat in silence, the hum of the oven ticking like a clock counting down to a decision. Finally, Daniel squeezed her hand. I'm in. We'll find a way to balance both goals. Relief washed over Lisa and me. Thank you, she whispered. The next morning, we gathered at the community college campus. A small group of administrators, students, and local press welcomed us into a sunlit classroom outfitted with mini ovens and a repurposed engine stand. The college president shook my hand. Your model is pioneering vocational training. As I looked around at Lisa greeting students with the confidence she'd earned, I caught her eye and offered a thumbs up. She winked back, then pivoted to guide a young woman through kneading dough, her laugh echoing off the walls. On the way home, I thought back to that first fateful dinner when a $2 ticket changed everything. Now that dollar-marked scrap had sparked a transformation reaching far beyond our little town. It had unleashed resilience in my daughter, in me, and in countless others. That evening, I sat on my porch swing, a glass of lemonade cooling in my hand. Lisa joined me, slipping her arm through mine. We watched the sunset bleed across the horizon. The future felt wide open, but we knew challenges lay ahead, balancing family and ambition, facing new competitors, and guarding our foundation's integrity. Yet as I breathed in the warm night air, I felt a profound gratitude. Betrayal had been the catalyst, but forgiveness and shared purpose had become our rallying cry. We had turned selfishness into opportunity mistrust, into partnership, and a crumpled ticket into a legacy of empowerment. I squeezed Lisa's hand. No matter what comes next, we face it together. She leaned her head on my shoulder. Together, she echoed. And under that sky, with the echo of dough rising in her bakery and engines humming in our shop, I knew that our story would continue rooted in hope, fueled by hard work, and bound by the unbreakable bond of family. The morning sun filtered through the lace curtains as I sipped my coffee, mulling over the events of the past week. The community college partnership had launched smoothly. The first cohort of students was already elbow-deep in dough and grease at our combined bakery shop classroom. Lisa's laughter echoed in my mind from that first day, her confidence almost blinding after the months of struggle. But today a new challenge awaited, one that threatened to unravel all we'd built. I slipped into my leather jacket and headed down to the shop where the roar of the overhead door greeted me like an old friend. Inside, the workstations were alive with activity. Marcus waved, motioning me over to a cluster of students fumbling with spark plugs. Their nervous excitement reminded me of the day I first taught Lisa to change the oil in her car, tentative hands discovering strength. Before I could congratulate them, my phone buzzed. A text from the college president emergency meeting at noon. Please head to campus ASAP. My heart skipped. What now? I muttered. I caught Marcus's curious glance. College partnership issue. I said, my voice tight. I'll explain later. I roared off in my truck, memories of Lisa's last-minute budget meeting flashing in my mind. She'd convinced Daniel to back her dream. Now I needed to rally behind hers again. At campus, I found the president pacing outside a glass lecture hall. His face was gray with concern. Stephen, he began, his voice low. We've received complaints from the local trades union. They're upset that our program is undercutting traditional apprenticeships by offering free training. They want assurances that we're not poaching their students. The words landed like a punch. I bowed my head, steadying myself. Understood. What do they want? Meet with their council this afternoon. If we can't convince them of our value, they'll lobby the board to shut us down. The stakes crystallized. This was bigger than bakery ovens or engine stands. This was about credibility. I swallowed. All right, let me gather Lisa and Marcus. We'll find a solution. Back in the parking lot, I called Lisa. Her tone was warm until I told her. They can't be serious, she scoffed. We're giving opportunities to those who have none. They're threatened, I said gently. We need to show them we're collaborators, not competitors. I'll meet them with you, she said, voice firm. We'll prove our program complements theirs. I nodded, though she couldn't see me. Thank you. In the afternoon sun, we assembled at the Union Hall, a modest brick building humming with tension. We were met by two stern-faced union leaders behind a long oak table. Their gazes flicked with skepticism as we entered, me, Lisa, in her flower dust apron, and Marcus carrying a laptop. The elder leader, his cap emblazoned with Local 572, spoke first. Your program's free tuition draws our apprentices away. They commit to 4 years, we train them on the job, then poof, they're gone to Hayes and Hayes. Lisa stepped forward, voice unwavering. Respectfully, sir, our model serves a different population. Single parents, career changers, people who never had access. We're not after your apprentices, we're expanding the pipeline. He snorted. Still, it impacts our numbers. We need guarantees. I cleared my throat. What if we formalize a bridge program? After our students complete their basics, they can transition into your apprenticeship with credit for prior learning. His eyebrow twitched. Credit for learning how much? Marcus handed over a printed accord, 2 credits for every level completed. We document competencies, he explained. Students ready for advanced tasks skip initial modules. The younger leader leaned back, tapping a pen. And you'd share curriculum, coordinate schedules, maybe host joint workshops. Exactly, I said. We share resources, split costs, and offer union members pathways without replacing them. They exchanged a glance. Silence stretched thick. Finally, the elder closed his eyes, then nodded once. Draft the MOU. We'll review. Relief washed over us. Lisa exhaled, her shoulders sagging. Thank you, she whispered, turning to me. I placed a hand on her back. That was yours. As we shook hands with the union leaders, a sense of unity rolled through the room, like oil settling in an engine. We had forged collaboration from conflict, honoring tradition while offering new hope. That evening, we reconvened at Murphy's Diner. Over chipped beef omelets and bottomless coffee, we sketched out the details for the bridge program, rotating instructors, shared certification exams, a joint advisory board. The manuscripts of our conversation filled napkins and tablecloth corners, each scribble a testament to compromise. Marcus pressed his finger to a doodle. This could scale to other trades, plumbers, electricians. Lisa's eyes lit up. We could partner with every union in town. The diner's buzz hummed around us, but our corner felt insulated by purpose. I looked at my daughter, once the one who stole from me, then demanded half the jackpot, now a visionary leader in her own right. My chest swelled with pride and something deeper, redemption. The next morning at the shop, we unveiled the union's logo beside ours on a joint banner. Students arriving for their oil change class paused to admire the symbol of solidarity. I greeted each with a thumbs-up, gratitude brimming. Later, I found Lisa teaching a union journeyman how to pipe cinnamon rolls. He laughed at the contrast, hands caked in grease icing, delicate swirls, but his eyes shone with respect. Watching them learn from each other, I realized we were bridging more than programs. We were bridging communities. That night, I walked home under a canopy of stars, the cool breeze whispering promises. I thought of the crumpled ticket that began this saga, a $2 joke that led to millions, betrayal, triumph, and now profound collaboration. Each twist had pushed us deeper into resilience. At home, I sat on the porch swing phone, buzzing with union emails confirming the MOU terms. I typed a quick reply, then set it aside and closed my eyes. In the hush, I felt the quiet victory. Fear had morphed into partnership, suspicion into trust. Lisa joined me moments later, slipping her arm through mine. We did good today. I smiled, heart light. We did. The future was still unwritten, brimming with possibilities and inevitable trials. But as long as we remained committed to each other and to service, I knew our journey would continue, fueled by purpose, guided by empathy, and grounded in the simple power of second chances. That next morning, I woke to the buzz of my phone beside the framed lottery ticket, an alert from the college confirming our bridge program's first cohort of union apprentices would start next week. I sat up in bed, heart racing with anticipation and a flicker of pride that warmed me better than coffee. I thought of Lisa, already 10 steps ahead of me, balancing pastry deadlines and curriculum planning. Now, as our program doubled in size, the real test would be sustaining momentum without burning out the people who'd fought so hard alongside us. I dressed quickly and drove to the auto shop first, nervous to see how our expanded classes were holding up. The smell of oil and steel greeted me as I pushed open the door. Marcus was crouched next to a student's car, explaining the nuances of torque. When he saw me, his face brightened. "They're on track," he said, voice low but triumphant. "Union reps dropped by to observe today." They were impressed. I exhaled, relief and pride mingling. "Good work," I told him. "Keep me posted on any hiccups." He nodded, already fielding a question from another apprentice. Leaving the shop, I headed to the bakery for a mid-morning check-in. I found Lisa perched on a stool, laptop open on the counter, scribbling projections for our next community bake sale. She looked up as I entered, her flour-dusted hair framing a determined smile. "How did it go?" she asked, closing the laptop with a soft click. "Smooth," I replied. They liked what they saw. My excitement made her eyes twinkle. That's one worry down. I perched on the stool next to her, warmth radiating from her as if she were a hearth. "How are you handling the increased orders? I saw the new catering requests hit your inbox." She sighed, running a hand through her hair. Moments of panic, moments of joy. "Next week, I need to hire 2 part-timers, possibly some of our foundation students who excelled in the summer workshop." Her voice trailed with both hope and fear. "I just don't want to lose the quality that made us special." I nodded. "Let's vet them together. We'll meet them at Murphy's for an interview over coffee." "I'll help." She reached over and squeezed my hand. "Thank you, Dad." Our afternoon unfolded in a flurry of resolving logistical puzzles. New invoices to approve, emails to draft, a last-minute phone call about extending shop hours for the apprentices who lived too far for daily commutes. By the time I walked home, the sun was dipping low, and my mind was already racing through tomorrow's to-do list. That evening, I joined Lisa and Daniel for a simple dinner at her place, a rare moment when our schedules aligned. The table was small but sturdy, strewn with finished projects, her bakery menus, my foundation budgets, and in the corner a newspaper clipping celebrating our union partnership. We ate roast chicken and steamed vegetables, the quiet clatter of forks and knives punctuating our conversation. Daniel cleared his throat after a moment. I've been thinking. His tone was serious but gentle. I want to propose a scholarship fund through the foundation, something I can manage so I feel involved. I looked at Lisa, surprise and gratitude flickering across her face. You want to help? He nodded, eyes sincere. I realize I haven't always been supportive of your vision, but seeing what you've created, how you've transformed your pain into possibility, I want to contribute. Lisa's eyes glistened as she reached for his hand. That means everything to me. I felt pride swell so big it nearly choked me. That's fantastic, I said finally. It'll deepen the foundation's roots. We spent the rest of dinner brainstorming details, endowment size, eligibility criteria, mentorship pairings. A sense of unity settled over us, proof that even fractured relationships could heal with intention and generosity. The next morning, I arrived at the shop to find Marcus waiting. Morning, he said, guiding me inside. I have some news. He led me to a back office where the union business agent stood with a clipboard. The agent extended his hand. Thanks for representing our interests so well, he said. We've decided to recommend this program statewide. Would Hayes and Hayes be interested in consulting with other locals? I glanced at Marcus, who nodded encouragingly. My pulse thrummed. We'd be honored, I replied. This is exactly the kind of impact we dreamed of. The agent smiled, and I felt the gravity of our work deepen. What began as a personal journey now had the potential to reshape vocational training across the state. Guided by that momentum, I spent the afternoon drafting a proposal for the statewide rollout, weaving in lessons learned from Lisa's fierce resolve to Marcus's practical innovations. Word by word, the plan took shape, anchored by our core principle. Empowerment thrives where respect meets opportunity. That evening, I met Lisa at Murphy's for our interviews with prospective bakery assistants. Over cups of coffee, we profiled 4 candidates, 2 foundation graduates, 1 union apprentice looking for supplementary work, and a local culinary student eager for real-world experience. Their stories varied, but each radiated the same hunger for growth. By the time we left, we'd made preliminary offers and set training schedules. Watching them walk away with cautious smiles, I felt our impact ripple outward once more. When I got home, Margaret was waiting on the porch, a plate of her famous lemon bars in hand. She hugged me tightly. I heard about the statewide initiative, she said, voice proud. I knew you'd keep pushing. I accepted the treat's warmth spreading through me. It's been a team effort, I said, thinking of every colleague, student, and family member who'd believed in this vision. Later, as I settled into bed, my eyes drifted to the lottery ticket's frame on my nightstand. In the soft lamplight, its faded numbers seemed almost poetic, a reminder of how a single act of betrayal had catalyzed this entire transformation. I closed my eyes and whispered a quiet thanks. The fortune I'd won was more than money. It was the lesson that boundaries and generosity could coexist, that second chances could spark legacies. Tomorrow would bring new challenges, more proposals, deeper negotiations, the ever-present tightrope between growth and sustainability. But as I drifted to sleep, I carried with me a comforting certainty this journey was powered by a purpose far greater than any jackpot. And as long as empathy, resilience, and love guided our steps, our story would continue to unfold, rich in possibility, united by family, and fueled by the simple power of believing in second chances. The morning light felt different as I woke on the anniversary of that fateful Father's Day dinner, the day my world fractured and then improbably began to heal. I lay in bed for a moment, listening to the house settle around me as memories of the past year unfurled Lisa's smirk, the lottery numbers dancing on that ragged ticket, the bitter arguments and the breakthroughs that followed. I realized I had become someone I barely recognized back then. Someone stronger, more compassionate, and fiercely determined to build something that mattered. I dressed and headed downstairs, pausing at the framed ticket before grabbing my car keys. It had a place of honor now, a symbol less of fortune and more of the journey we'd shared. I slipped it a grateful salute and stepped out into the cool morning air. My first stop was Lisa's bakery. The streets gleamed as dew settled on rooftops. When I walked through the door, the aroma of fresh bread and fruit tarts enveloped me, and I found her teaching the new crop of assistants how to whip cream into stiff peaks. She looked up and smiled, her eyes bright with purpose. "Happy anniversary," she joked softly, squeezing my hand. Ready for breakfast? I returned her smile. Absolutely. Over coffee and cinnamon rolls at a corner table, we revisited the path we'd traveled. Remember when I thought you were poisoning me with yeast? I teased. She laughed, the sound light and genuine. And you threatened to sell the bakery's secret recipes. We shared a look of camaraderie forged through hardship. Then conversation turned to the present, the statewide apprenticeship rollout, the new scholarship fund Daniel had established, and the foundation's upcoming holiday charity drive. That event's coming up fast, I said, stirring my coffee. We need a plan for our biggest fundraiser yet. Lisa nodded. Her brow furrowed thoughtfully. I was thinking a joint bake and build auction. We showcase pastries alongside restored engines, silent auction items, live demos, and volunteer signups. I loved the idea. Perfect. Let's pitch it to Marcus and the union board today. With that, we prepared for a full day of meetings, proposals, and logistics. I headed next door to the shop where volunteers buzzed around engine blocks and welding torches. Marcus greeted me with enthusiasm. We've got 6 restored cars ready for the auction display, he said, leading me toward a gleaming '67 Camaro and a vintage Ford pickup. I'm thinking a demo of a complete brake overhaul at the event. That'll draw a crowd. I agreed. Let's coordinate with Lisa's bakery schedule so the pastry station is right beside it. As we brainstormed details, I felt the familiar surge of excitement that came from building something new. The foundation had grown beyond anything I could have imagined, but today's task felt as vital as our first oil change workshop. Late morning turned into afternoon as we met with union representatives and college administrators to finalize event logistics. We discussed permits, volunteer shifts, marketing, and a shared mission of empowering our community through skill building and small business support. There was laughter, the occasional tension over budgets, but always a sense of purpose that guided every decision. By the time I stepped back into my car, the sun was starting to dip, painting the sky in soft oranges and pinks. My phone buzzed with a text from Margaret. Dinner at home tonight, I'll bring dessert. I smiled, grateful for family moments after a long day. I replied, see you at 7. Arriving home, I hung my jacket and took a moment to admire the living room where framed photos of our journey lined the walls. Our first diner meeting, the Channel 4 segment, the apprenticeship classes, the union handshake, and more. In the center hung a new photo of the Camaro and the bakery's signature cinnamon rolls side by side, a visual testament to our unprecedented alliance. At 7, Margaret arrived bearing a pie, its aroma filling the kitchen. We set the table, simply roast turkey, green beans, and mashed potatoes, comfort food to ground us amid our ambitious projects. Lisa and Daniel joined soon after, and for the first time in memories, the dining table felt unhurried. Conversation flowed easily. Daniel shared news of the scholarship's first recipient, and Lisa spoke of her newest pastry creation. I looked around at them. My daughter, once my adversary and now my partner in change. My son-in-law forging his own path of support. And my sister ever steady with her homemade desserts. My heart swelled with gratitude and humility. As we finished pie, I tapped my glass. I want to thank you all. This year hasn't been easy, but we've built something extraordinary. None of it would exist without your trust and effort. Daniel raised his glass. To family and new beginnings. Lisa chimed in. To second chances. Margaret winked. And to Dad for turning a $2 joke into a miracle. We laughed, the clink of glasses punctuating our shared pride. Later that night, after everyone left, I lingered in the kitchen washing dishes by hand. The water ran warm, and I thought back to the day I fished that lottery ticket from the trash, so sure I'd been wronged. If someone had told me then that it would lead to a bakery, a restoration shop, apprenticeship programs, scholarships, and statewide partnerships, I wouldn't have believed them. Yet here we were, proof that the deepest wounds can fuel the greatest triumphs when met with resolve, empathy, and unwavering boundaries. As I rinsed the last plate, I thought of the future, the bake and build auction, the expansion to other trades, the ripple effect our model could have on distant towns. Challenges would come. Of course, new competitors, funding hurdles, logistical puzzles. But I felt ready. Our foundation was built on principles stronger than doubt, the power of honest work, the healing of second chances, and the bond between a father and daughter who dared to believe in redemption. I dried my hands and looked once more at the framed ticket hanging on the wall of our hallway. Under its glass, the faded numbers glowed softly. It was no longer a symbol of betrayal or fortune, it was the spark that ignited our shared journey. I placed a hand on its frame, whispering a silent vow to honor what we'd built to protect our community and to lead with integrity and love always. Turning off the lights, I stepped into the night, the house settling into peaceful quiet. The road behind us had been winding and steep, but it led to a horizon bright with possibility. And as I closed the door, I knew the greatest chapters of our story were still ahead, fueling hope, forging unity, and demonstrating that real wealth lies not in dollars, but in the strength of family and the lives we lift along the way.